Let's go back to the end of World War I. In 1919, the world had just survived the deadliest war it had ever seen. Millions were dead, whole cities destroyed, and everyone wanted peace. The victors of the war gathered in France at the Palace of Versailles to write the peace treaty. This treaty, called the Treaty of Versailles, was supposed to bring stability. Instead, it planted the seeds of the next war. Why? Because it treated Germany not just as a loser, but as a criminal. Germany was forced to take the blame for the entire war, pay back huge amounts of money, called reparations, give up land, and shrink its army to almost nothing. For ordinary Germans, this felt humiliating. Their pride was crushed, their economy was in ruins, and their new democracy looked weak. At the same time, the old empires of Europe broke apart. Austria-Hungary split into many smaller countries: Austria, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, and others. The Ottoman Empire collapsed, and Britain and France drew new borders in the Middle East, often without thinking about the people who lived there. And to keep the peace, a new group was formed, the League of Nations. The League was meant to act like a world referee, stepping in if countries started causing trouble. But it had one major flaw. It had no real army, and the United States, the most powerful nation at the time, refused to join. From the very beginning, the League was weak, so Germany was angry and broken. The new world map was unstable, and the referee, the League, had no power. Now let's move into the 1920s. At first, there was a little recovery, but then came the Great Depression in 1929. This was the worst economic crisis the modern world had ever seen. It started when the U.S. stock market crashed, but it spread worldwide. In America, about 1 in 4 people lost their jobs. In Germany, it was even worse. Millions were unemployed, and families couldn't afford food. Inflation made money almost worthless. Stories spread of people carrying wheelbarrows of cash just to buy bread. In hard times like this, people often lose faith in democracy. They start looking for strong leaders who promise quick solutions, even if it means giving up freedom. This is when dictators began to rise. In Italy, Benito Mussolini had already taken power back in 1922. He created a system called fascism, which glorified the nation above all, crushed political opponents, and demanded obedience. His slogan was simple: believe, obey, fight. Mussolini promised to restore the glory of the Roman Empire, and many Italians, tired of chaos, went along with him. In Germany, a man named Adolf Hitler was also rising. Back in 1923, he tried to take over the government in an event called the Beer Hall Putsch. It failed, and he went to jail. But during that time, he wrote a book called Mein Kampf, meaning My Struggle, where he laid out his dangerous ideas. That Germans were a master race, that Jews were to blame for Germany's problems, and that Germany needed more land, especially in Eastern Europe. Most people ignored him at first. But after the Depression hit, Hitler's message found fertile ground. By 1933, he became Chancellor of Germany, basically the head of government. Soon after, a suspicious fire destroyed the German parliament, building the Reichstag fire. Hitler used it as an excuse to pass the Enabling Act, a law that gave him total power. From that moment, Germany was no longer a democracy. It was a dictatorship under Hitler. Step by step, Hitler transformed Germany. He rebuilt the army, ignoring the Treaty of Versailles. He built new roads and factories, giving people jobs and hope. But he also spread poisonous hatred. In 1935, the Nuremberg laws stripped Jews of their citizenship, treating them as outsiders in their own country. In 1938, things turned violent in an event called Kristallnacht, meaning the night of broken glass, when Jewish homes, shops, and synagogues were attacked across Germany. It was a grim warning of horrors yet to come. While Hitler was consolidating power in Germany, Japan was also on the move. Japan's military leaders believed their small island nation needed more land and raw materials. In 1931, they invaded Manchuria, a region in northern China rich in coal and iron. The League of Nations protested, but Japan simply quit the League. Nothing was done to stop them. That sent a clear signal. Aggression would go unpunished. Mussolini was watching. In 1935, he invaded Ethiopia in Africa. Again, the League condemned it, but no real action was taken. Ethiopia's emperor, Haile Selassie, begged the League for help, warning, "It is us today. It will be you tomorrow." He was right. In 1936, Hitler made his boldest move yet. He sent German troops into the Rhineland, a region near France that was supposed to remain demilitarized. German generals warned him it was risky. If France had resisted, Germany would have backed down. But France and Britain did nothing. They were still haunted by the memory of World War I and wanted to avoid conflict at all costs. Hitler learned an important lesson. The Allies were reluctant to fight. That same year, Hitler and Mussolini drew closer, forming the Rome-Berlin Axis. Japan soon joined with them in the Anti-Comintern Pact, aimed against communism. These three powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, became known as the Axis powers at the same time. Another conflict broke out, the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939. It was a battle between a left-leaning government and a fascist rebellion led by General Francisco Franco. Hitler and Mussolini sent weapons, planes, and soldiers to support Franco. The war became a laboratory for new tactics. The German Air Force bombed the town of Guernica, killing civilians and testing the strategy of blitzkrieg lightning war. Britain and France, once again, stayed out. The dictators grew more confident by 1937. Japan had launched a full-scale invasion of China. The violence was shocking. In the city of Nanjing, Japanese troops massacred hundreds of thousands of civilians and committed atrocities that horrified the world. But still, no one stopped them by now. Hitler's ambitions were clear. In 1938, he carried out the Anschluss, annexing Austria into Germany without firing a shot. Next, he demanded the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia where many ethnic Germans lived. Britain and France, desperate to avoid war, met with Hitler in Munich. They agreed to let him have the Sudetenland. This was called the Munich Agreement. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain returned home claiming peace. For our time. But it was a false hope. Only a few months later, Hitler broke his promise and seized the rest of Czechoslovakia. Appeasement had failed. Then came the final twist. In August 1939, Hitler signed a shocking deal with his enemy Joseph Stalin, the Nazi-Soviet Pact. Publicly, it was a promise not to attack each other. Secretly, it included a plan to divide Poland between them. Hitler had secured his Eastern Front. He could now move west without fear of Soviet resistance. September 1st, 1939, German troops invaded Poland. Tanks rolled across the plains, planes bombed cities. The world witnessed the terrifying speed of blitzkrieg. On September 3rd, Britain and France declared war on Germany. A few weeks later, Stalin's Red Army invaded Poland from the east, just as agreed in the secret pact. World War II had begun.